Please welcome to the stage Willow Defebaugh, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Atmos.
My climate story began where I suspect many of yours did, with a crisis. It was 2017, Donald Trump was president, wildfires were consuming the West Coast, climate change seemed like it was reaching a fever pitch, and beneath it all, I felt a restless anxiety in my soul. So I did what anyone would do. I quit my job. I quit my job that I had spent a career working for as a magazine editor, and I left in search of answers, trying to make sense of it all and my purpose in it. And that time took me all over the world. I spent a year seeking. I studied in ashrams in India. I sat in ceremony in the jungles of Central America. I became an avid practitioner and teacher of meditation. I was determined to protect my peace from the problems that were plaguing our world. Around the same time, I was introduced by a mutual friend to someone who was interested in starting a publication focused on sustainability and climate. Now, I was fairly certain that my time in the publishing industry was over. However, this did speak to something deep within me. When I was a child, I actually told my parents that I wanted to grow up to be the editor-in-chief of an environmental magazine. Strangely specific, but my father is here somewhere and can verify. The person that I met that day ended up becoming my business partner and co-founder of Atmos Magazine. We dreamed of a publication that would bring together poets and artists with climate scientists and journalists. We were aligned around a shared question as to why storytelling around the climate crisis had always been so data-driven and clinical, rather than telling stories that speak to what this crisis really is, a crisis of heart. What began as a passion project quickly bloomed into something much bigger than we had expected. We were working with environmental heroes like Jane Goodall and Vandana Shiva, as well as artists like Yoko Ono and Maggie Rogers, bringing people together for a common cause and a common love for this planet. But even as Atmos bloomed, I still felt a restlessness within me. More and more, my time was feeling split between making the magazine and what I considered to be my spiritual life. As I prepared to make a choice between these two paths, life stepped in and made one for me when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. I decided that it was time to fully invest in Atmos. My partner and I gave all of our energy to it. We expanded with a global team. We began expanding across platforms. And I started writing a weekly newsletter called The Overview, one of the early editions of which went viral. In it, I drew comparisons and parallels between this virus, which was impacting our ability to breathe, the fires in the Amazon, the lungs of the planet, and the fact that in many traditional medicine systems, the lungs are where we store grief. Grief that we were seeing well to the surface all over the world in so many different arenas, including in my own home. In lockdown, with nowhere to go and nowhere to run, I finally looked in the mirror and confronted what was the source of my anxiety for so many years. I had not been living authentically as myself, but I had been living in a state of dissociation. So I came out as a trans woman. I began hormone therapy, and I started the messy process of metamorphosis. In the chrysalis of quarantine, I liquefied so that I might truly live. And I poured myself into my writing during that time. Each week for the overview, I would look to a different aspect of nature for some lesson I could tether myself to. during this incredibly transformative time, both for myself and so many others? What could hummingbirds teach us about living lightly? What could frogs teach us about vulnerability and how it feels to breathe through such sensitive skin? What could ravens and crows, which hold funerals for the dead, teach us about the universality of grief? Over time, science became my spirituality. And it started to slowly dawn on me that if science is the study of life, and spirituality is the study of the sacred, why wouldn't they be one and the same? At the same time as my transition progressed and I embodied myself more physically, so too did I embody myself spiritually. And I started to understand that spirituality is not about escaping from the world and its problems. It is about becoming more deeply rooted in the world. We speak about the climate crisis as if it is a problem to be solved rather than a wound to be healed. And what is a wound if not a separation? Flesh parted from flesh. Our species has lived in a state of dissociation from our true ecological selves, from the rest of life, the other beings that we share this planet with, this large interconnected system that we call the Earth. Now, I know how terrifying it can be to stare into the wound, to confront all that has already been lost, including time that has been lost. But I also know that transformation is possible. I know that every single person in this room is a part of it. Each of you has a truth to be lived, a story to be told, a stitch and a thread that is a part of the mending of this world. Earlier this year, we published an anthology of my writings over the years, 100 different lessons I had collected on what I now refer to as or know as spiritual ecology. The book is organized into 4 different themes, which I consider to be the 4 pillars of spiritual ecology, as well as the defining themes of my life: reverence, balance, evolution, and healing. It begins with reverence, which is an invitation to bridge science and spirituality, to once again fall in love with the wonders of our planet. I have found again and again in my life that love is a far more powerful motivator than fear. Because when you remind people that they are in love with the earth, or as Robin Wall Kimmerer says, that the earth loves us back, that changes us. Because when we love something, we are moved to protect it, rather than solely fear, which can cause us to isolate and shut down. And the second is balance, because when we begin to cultivate a sense of reverence for the world, we start to understand that we are part of a much larger balance. Our species is but one strand in the web of life. And in order to maintain that web, in order to maintain the health of the web and of this planet, we all have to adapt. And so the third theme is evolution. It is upon each of us to embody transformation on scales both individual and collective, small and large, to learn from the wisdom of nature, which is constantly reinventing itself, matter in metamorphosis, changing forms, slipping shapes again and again and again. And our species is not separate from that. And if we can do this, that is when the healing can begin. That is when we can return to ourselves, to each other, and to this beautiful planet that we call home. Thank you.